and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael Roser, and once again, folks, we're taking over the night waves. Well, night airwaves, I should say, but then again, this is YouTube. We're not necessarily in Radioland anymore, folks. We've expanded. Man, we have one hell of a show up for you tonight. If you have been following along with the rest of this week, you will be just as delightfully entertained and surprised. And of course, it's not about the entertainment, it's about the knowledge, it's about the experience, and it's about the education when it comes to the topics at large that we discuss here on the channel. And tonight, folks, I am absolutely flabbergasted because there's a whole story that goes behind the gentleman with me tonight, and this guy has been working for such a very long time. I mean, he has accumulated tiers of knowledge that could be related to strata within our Grand Canyon, if you catch my drift. Now, one of the things about my guest tonight is that, we shared a close friend, and within their outfit, I crossed paths quite a few times, and oddly enough, I think I've met Stephen Flaherty, my guest tonight, face-to-face, but around about 10, 11, 12 years ago. So it's been quite some time, and I never really had a chance to discuss things with him at length. So he has been wonderful in accepting my request tonight to come on the show and speak about his experiences within the paranormal field. And, of course, folks, we have a little bit different of an angle to work through with this tonight because Stephen works specifically with exorcisms, and I'd like to know the ins and outs of the working man in this respect. We have all had our thoughts when it comes to being manipulated by certain energies. Those who have been following the channel and all the peripheral channels I'm involved with have heard my story of the two specific entities that had followed me home from investigations. And although I did not need to be exorcised in the way that perhaps Hollywood would depict, there was certainly a process that I had to go through. And believe it or not, Seven Hills Paranormal was there with me for some of that journey, at least until I got myself grounded enough and strong enough to basically accept that responsibility, not fight it off, okay? It's not about that, about accepting that responsibility. What you've called in will come to you. So what do you do with it at that point? Well, again, maybe it's when you're in the bathtub, maybe it's when you're at the post office, maybe it's on your ride to work in the morning, but it's not at the location that you were at a couple, 2-3 days prior to asking for something in way of sentience. Instead, it chooses its own time. This is how spirit, at least in my observation, generally works. So, folks, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Stephen Flaherty of Seven Hills Paranormal, and we're going to get into his experiences. Folks, here we go. Stephen, my God, thank you so much for being on the show, brother. It's awesome to have you here.
Okay, can I just clear up one thing? With
Yes.
Seven Hills Ghost Hunters and Paranormal Researchers, I'm out of Worcester, Massachusetts, and we do have another group here that is Seven Hills Paranormal.
Oh.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a different setup. So okay.
I really appreciate you clarifying that for me because obviously I didn't realize that. Now let me ask you a question because when I knew this particular outfit some years ago, I knew Seven Hills Paranormal. Now was that something that came before Seven Hills Ghost Hunters and Paranormal Researchers, or is this a leg off of that or something entirely different?
That's something totally different because chances are if you knew us back in that time, we were pretty much only Seven Hills Ghost Hunters. Okay. We were, like I said, it was, if I can use Mike's name, I just want to say that it was Mike and I, we got to gather on an open ghost hunt. And it was funny. We sat down after the ghost hunt and had dinner. And it was from that time on, we were like inseparable. We turned around and, and he had gone off to Colorado one time. He had gotten the SLS camera. And he actually had got to work with Chapman there to see how the thing works. And a lot of the people out there saying, they don't like the words ghost hunters. They want, it to be more of a learning issue. So it would, the paranormal researchers came in after that to, just to make us sound more of you know, more more of a learning process type deal instead of just going out and chasing ghosts type deal.
I completely understand what you're getting at here, and it's actually one of the issues that I have with some of the modern paranormal groups out there. Everybody wants to look like ghost hunters or ghost adventures, and they all, stand in the same poses with the sunglasses and the black garb. And, there's a whole show behind some of these presentations. I'll be honest with you, I have spoken to some of these groups, even within our area, Stephen, that just they hadn't encapsulated the actual work that they were doing. They were more concerned about the image that they were portraying, but within that respect, they weren't portraying the right image. They were bringing something that was glitzy and sort of scary and creepy. And I find that with doing this seriously and you're working with the public, these are folks who contact you because they have experienced some sort of trauma or in the throes of doing so. They're frightened out of their minds. They're worried about family members, friends, whatever the case may be. These people have genuine concern, and, it's not about going and having a creepy, scary time. So I completely understand what you're saying with that and absolutely respect it. Now, let me ask you personally, because I like to start here because everybody has a different story about how they became developed in the paranormal field or whatever aspect that they choose to follow. Where did your interest in the paranormal stem from? Was it something that occurred when you were younger, perhaps some sort of experience, traumatic or otherwise, that propelled you into this? Did you have something later in life, or do you feel you've always been sensitive and aware of the spirit world?
I don't believe I'm really that sensitive. To me, dealing with what I deal with, like you were saying that, I deal more with the demonic issues type deal. But now also too, I don't deal with exorcisms pretty much at all. I do the investigation for an archbishop from California, and I turn around and they'll contact me with the idea of these people called in and said they think they have this issue. So I go out to get the evidence for I want to say the church, so they can turn around and make their decisions on what they want to do after that. As for a real exorcism type deal, I think I've sat through kind of one,
Okay.
Type one,
Okay.
but not the idea, but the idea of getting the information for them so they're not having priests run out before there's something a little bit more than just somebody telling you a story. Okay, and I mean don't get it wrong. I'm not saying anybody's just telling me a story. That's not my thing. I believe everything people tell me. If you've seen it or you've heard about it, chances are at one time or another I probably experienced it somewhere. I was a ghost hunter for a long time, and you were asking about that. I never had a scary experience. I never had a paranormal encounter. I was always into the macabre when I was small. Horror movies, any kind of stories that people could tell me. You always went and hung around on Halloween in the cemetery. And anything to get the goosebumps up and running. And then I had a guy that I had worked with, and he had said that he did this as kind of a hobby to go out and do ghost hunting. And he said I could be interested in doing this. And this was long before any of the popular TV shows were on. This was something like I had never heard about this. Just something that people really do. And he said, "Oh yeah," he said, And he had a group of like 4 or 5 people that were really together with him. And they turned, and we went out, and it just hit me from that point on. And at one time, it hit me so hard that actually we were helping people. Okay, like you said, people call up and they're scared out of their minds. I mean, they're it's a bump in the night, and it's something, and of course the TV shows and everything else are saying demonic. It's
Right.
it's saying, okay, in my whole journey of this, and I mean that's going on almost 30 years, I think I probably had a handful of real demonic issues that, like, Mike and myself couldn't handle it. There's a difference between a demonic and, let's say, a a spirit. If you're a jerk as a human being, you're a jerk as a ghost too. Okay, that doesn't go away as soon as you pass away. If
Right.
you were a jerk or this kind of stuff, you kind of, I think you kind of pick this up a little bit after that because now you know people can't see you. So okay, I can scare this one more, or I can do this thing, you know. Um, but again, if you can settle that kind of thing down and just, you know, to me in your household, if you have a ghost in your household, it's almost like a tenant. You turn around and you lay the laws down in your house. You're not in the bathroom with me. You're not in the bedroom with me. And I don't care if you walk up the hallway or, you know, make a little noise or do this or do that. You know, it's you know, it's kind of a tenant deal. And I mean, live together happily in the whole bit. Removing it, if a spirit doesn't want to go, it's very hard to remove it out of the house, especially if it's been there for forever. Okay, but if you can get people to understand what's happening and understand that they have more power about this than they think, then you know they can almost live together.
Well,
Okay.
some of the more benign spirits, or you know, what we would consider more friendly spirits in certain ways, you know, certainly don't necessarily need to be extradited from the property. But what if the tenant is still fearful after, you know, an analysis coming back and saying, well, we found some information on the person that was here before who had passed away in the house, let's say, and this person, you know, through our investigation seems to really just want to be here and, you know, live out that existence without as much interference as, you know, they can, but, you know, have no malevolence behind them, and yet the tenant says, no, I want this ghost out of here. How would you deal with something like that?
No, again, you got to remember these spirits were human at one time, so they do have a kind of a compassion about it. And I mean, the more you get to know them, or the more they do seem to react with you, the more you can actually coach them either to be quiet to the point that these people don't realize they're there, or you can actually just try to coach them out of the house. Okay, everybody
Okay.
reaches for the sage. It says, "Okay, I've got my power
Right.
weapon against Steve." Okay, sage works against an evil spirit. Okay, something that has a bad attitude, and that will help for a while. But it's also like an antibiotic. The more you use it, the less effective it becomes. Okay, it's something you shouldn't be doing absolutely every day, or do it every, you know, once a week or type deal. Make sure you get corners of the house, you know, any kind of room, all the corners up in, you know, the top corners and the whole bit, because that will, you know, because that's where they like to hide out.
Huh.
I actually got to work with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and
Okay.
Ed's idea was the idea. You are just an investigator. Forget the ghost hunting part. You're an investigator. You have to find out where this spirit or whatever is hiding. Okay, and that means you're in the basement and you're under. You know, you're looking in the old well, and you're looking in the back crawl spaces, and you know, it. You know, you can bring them out, and of course, a spirit will usually does want to come out. You know, to react with you, but you've got to find out where the place is that they like to hang around. And I'll tell you now too, if you have one spirit or ghost, you
Hmm.
have you have a couple of them. If you usually take a
Interesting.
really good look at pictures that have spirits and that kind of stuff, you usually will get a couple, let's say, sets of eyes, or a couple, you know.
Yes.
They never travel really by themselves. It's almost like you go out to a party. Now you can go into a room that has 100 people in the room, and you hang around with five of them because those are your friends, and those are the ones that, you know, you go from party to party. Okay, I mean, you say hi to everybody and you have a good time, but you still have that circle of friends you carry around with you. And the
Right.
same thing with spirits, that they have a handful of um, you know, friends that they have hung around with, or that they have picked up throughout. You know, being alone is being alone. I don't care whether you're alive or passed away. I believe that you don't want to be alone. You want to have something, you want to have something around here that you can talk to. I mean, like I said, I may be talking out my head too, but you know,
No, I mean, I find that more often than not, we can find some sort of familiarity when we talk about the construct of the metaphysical world, for lack of better definition. Uh, if, like you said, if you were a bully in this life, you very well may be a bully in the afterlife. You're not losing that personality per se. From my understanding, there is some sort of threshold wherein at least there has to be ego dissolution, or dissolving of that particular aspect of yourself, wherein perhaps it's easier to recognize that we are all part of that whole, and then it's said that you then go into the light at that point. These are linear interpretation of what may actually be. My question for you at this moment here, with the idea that you bring up, if there's one entity there, you're more likely guaranteed to find many others. What about situations where you go to a location, you identify something that, I'm not going to use the word demonic, okay? I'm going to use a very heavy, ancient, negative energy. We'll go with that. This particular energy that's there, and again, can be viewed as quite nasty, is actually keeping some of these, what we would consider smaller spirits or more docile spirits. Perhaps it manifests in the way of a little girl, and she says, I can't leave because this entity says I have to stay or is keeping me here. How do you walk into a situation like that and assess something of that nature?
well, that's actually true. I do run into that, every once in a while, that you do have a supreme spirit type deal that does hold or allow spirits to do whatever it wants to. But I also think it's a way of the big spirit gathering energy. Okay, he can send his little peons out to go scare people, and yet he's the one who collects all the energy. Where, like you say, the little girl doesn't get it. It's she gets enough. Because I believe that scaring or upsetting people is what a spirit kind of feeds off of. Now, see,
Mm-hmm.
I had asked somebody one time about where are some of probably the most haunted places around, and she had told me a supermarket or the mall, and that's a way that they can walk just right up the middle of the aisle and touch you and touch this one and every time they touch somebody, they get a little energy off of them, and that way they're turning around and they're getting a full smorgasbord of their energy, and you don't even realize it. You got to chill. You don't think twice of it. And so I mean, I kind of believe in that kind of issue. And yes, I mean they do seem to keep, well, I'm gonna say prisoners, or and I mean it is, but now also too, you've got to think of um, these spirits almost like the service. You have chiefs and all the way down, and it's like everybody
Some sort of
has their only kind
hierarchy.
of, yeah,
Yeah.
that they're run, that they have to keep. And again, but I don't think all of it's the idea they're just keeping these people at work for them. I just think it's these other spirits that it has seemed to be able to bully. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a gang. Okay, you've got the leader of the gang, and you've got all these other kids that do, the bad work. But yet the big gang member gets the highlights out of it. It's like so yeah. I really believe that that doesn't stop just at this world, and I'm kind of a strange believer that the idea it's a whole lot easier to hate somebody than it is to care for somebody, because there's a lot of work that goes in for caring for someone, where
Oh,
it's
yes.
easier to say I don't like you because of your hair color, or you wear a hat, or this or that, and I mean, and I think that carries on to that, that yeah, okay, now people can't see me, so I can be a little more mischief than I would be if you saw me.
I have found that To an absolute T. In fact, when I've been bothered by certain spirits, I can actually see them in my mind's eye in the way that they're sort of creeping around as if they don't realize that I can see them. And this isn't, of course, every single time, but many times I've found that skulking aspect of, spirit that, doesn't necessarily belong in the place that it is, but it's stopped in for a visit, however uncomfortable it may be. We often look at paranormal locations, and when we talk about how the existence of some of this activity is still there, we've come up with many different theories. Something that's always intrigued me, and I would love to one day get to the bottom of, is the understanding that we as energy are enormous, okay? And we're not just going into the esoteric metaphysical end wherein we exist in multi-dimensions and so forth, different conversation, right? We're just talking about perhaps the arc field that we have. The arc field at the outermost layer is 55 feet from top to bottom, right to left. So when we're sitting in a room with somebody, our arc fields are crossing and meshing in certain ways, and again, it might be on the outer perimeter. So working with the paranormal field, it's often been suggested that when we go into these particular places, some of the time it may be in wave activity what we're putting out subconsciously. So maybe our expectations are manifesting in certain ways. Maybe we have some sort of vision of what's going to be experienced as an entirety within that location. And so this higher energy, or this idea that thoughts manifest in some way, shape, or form, we walk into a location and we sort of click. And within that energy, next thing you know, subconsciously, we might be making some of this stuff come around. So when you look at demonic activity, I've wondered if perhaps it's not necessarily demonic. I'm not going to say this with every case, but in a lot of cases, especially when people go out to the field and are actually at a certain place, perhaps it's actually a slivered facet of ourselves, more likely something subconscious that we haven't really dealt with in this life or another. So it's a part of ourselves that is rooted in trauma. And because we've ignored it again in another life, we've brought it in, we still have it on our back, as unaware as we may be, but it's now manifesting as what appears to be a separate negative energy. What do you think about that idea?
No, I believe that. I believe you've carried spirits from one life to another. Mm-hmm. Lorraine Warren always thought that it's like, you don't always just go back to this life that they have, and she was gifted enough to know about the other lives this spirit may have had, and where that, like you say, this spirit has attached itself to you, because like you say, I believe it's one thing that, you more or less just move on to another body or whatever. You may have your time in the spirit world, but I believe eventually you get to another body, and you start the whole life procedure over. But yeah, I believe 100% that's that you can carry this from one lifestyle that you had multi years ago to this one here. And yeah, I mean, because it doesn't, as energy doesn't disperse. It's always there, and it's so there's no reason why you really shouldn't believe that it would carry from one to another. But,
yes, you erase that linearity that we all tend to carry, because it's basically the way we're constructed. It's a programming, it's a signature. We see things linearly, and we're locked in at 0 point, which of course gives us a frame of reference within this physical reality, so that we may do what we came here to do. When we talk about these energies carrying over, at least for our own comprehension, we speak about attachments. This is a word that, I know you've heard many times before, but I think there's an implication there that we aren't really addressing full, because as you mirror that against what exorcism is, attachment means something that's latched on. A possession is something that, again, is purported to enter the body and then be able to animate against the original occupant's will. I'm wondering, because looking at Dolores, who was a world-renowned hypnotist and actually forged the avenue that we followed in way of past life regression, very much expounding on Edgar Casey's work in a very intentional way, but not necessarily begin with that at the helm. She believed and had said to the day that she died that spirits don't occupy another body the way that we would think they would. It's literally acting as a manipulator within your auric field or energetic field that may bring about some sort of disease or some imbalance, really is what it is. And, within those parameters, if the suggestion is large enough, the person may actually act out what's being suggested from this attachment. What are your thoughts on an attachment being perhaps ensconced within the auric field or entering in, again, to stay within that inner shield within the energy, or having a spirit actually enter a body in full and take possession of that body? What are your thoughts versus those two notions, if you will?
Again, now we're going to split the thing again to where it's a spirit, that's being, a jerk or a demonic. Okay, remember, a demonic is a fallen angel. Okay, he's turned around, and he was one of Lucifer's, soldiers. That one, they were kicked out. I'm a believer, and it's only my thought, is I believe hell is here. It's just here on the top of earth. I don't believe it's a hole in the ground, or let me put it this way, I don't believe that my God ever sent Lucifer to a burning pit. Okay? I don't believe that my loving God would ever do anything, even to somebody he dislikes so much that he was going to ban them out of heaven. But I don't believe he was going to ban them to a burning pit. I believe, Lucifer had built that himself. Okay, and this is his way of living. Okay, I also am a true believer that even though you think demons are ever so awful in the whole bit, I believe that there's a little touch of goodness inside of them, because they came from some place that was all loving and all good. Okay, right. Even though that they have sworn to Lucifer that anything against God and religion and the whole bit they swear to, I still believe in the back of their heads there's a little dot that there's always something good somewhere inside of them.
It would stand to reason, because if we all come from the same source and we are not reflecting that purity of source, then we are reflecting possibly just a character. And I'm putting that very, very simply. It comes back, and I've used this analogy in many different ways, but for those of you who haven't heard it, the way I look at the eternal source, again, very simplistically, let's say this is an apple and it represents that whole source. This is God, okay? Nothing else exists within, this space, let's say. This is God. So God then cuts a small slice out of himself, and of this apple falls to the ground. Now, within this observation, you can see that the apple that fell to the ground is now a piece of you that's off of you, so that there's this idea or perception of separation. Truth of the matter is, the apple is still an apple and is still part of that, although it's now playing the part of being a piece. So what we do when we enter the physical is we experience the limitation, we experience the separation on purpose. This is the intention, because we know all of this when we're in spirit form. We have all the knowledge of what will be and what has been and what is at the moment. I mean, it's omniscient is the word I'm looking for. Sorry, I was stumbling there for a moment. It's omniscience. And here we come to experience the exact opposite of that. And this is where you get that sort of satanic idea, or the idea of just living in the flesh, which for some people, I'm going to say I understand that. If God wants to experience everything that can be experienced, then why would it judge itself? And I like your idea that God wouldn't banish one of his sons, or at least in this example, energy, to some sort of eternal hellfire and torture and punishment. It just doesn't seem to fit. Now, when we go into exorcisms, we go into paranormal investigations, but I want to focus a little bit on the exorcism because it's very intriguing. A lot of time, religion is at the helm. Okay, and I've heard many people speak the way that you do when you have a Christian background or something along those lines. It's a very powerful modality, again, from my understanding, when it comes to expelling some sort of energy. Do we actually need call upon those particular figures? If my belief system is more agnostic in a sense, okay, but I do understand that there is energy and intention and thoughts manifest, the spiritual principles of things. Can I, if faced with this situation, be able to go through an exorcism either on the receiving side or on the working side without the influence of religion?
Okay. Yes, without the idea of religion itself, but okay, now take an AA member, okay, and he goes in with the idea that he needs a higher power. He needs to believe there's something out there that's working on his side. Okay. When things are at their lowest, though, when things are as bad as they can get, he's got to realize that there is a little, little glimmer of hope somewhere that he has to, walk his way to. Same thing here. It doesn't have to be a religion cult thing, but I do believe it needs to be something that you feel is more powerful than you are. Okay,
Okay.
everybody in their own minds always figure, oh, I'm the most, you're 18 years old. You're the most powerful thing there is. Nothing's ever going to hurt you. Nothing's ever going to, you jump up. I work for a university, okay? So I deal with kids that do some of the most, let's say, funny things that I know of, okay? And it's like I look at myself being 60 years old going, I never do anything like that. And yeah, probably when I was 18, I did the same thing. Nothing's going to happen to me. But the same thing here is, I think you're brought up with the idea you're the most powerful thing in your universe. And that there's nothing out there that's going to hurt you until things start to hurt you. And then, like I said, I am a recovering alcoholic myself. And it's the idea that there had to be something that was more powerful than me to get me through the times that were just the worst. Okay. I mean, yes, to me, it was a religion. Okay. Because I do believe in God and in Jesus Christ and that kind of stuff. But even if I didn't believe in them, I would have believed there was something. And I don't even care if it's the bowl sitting on the table in front of you with candy in it. Hey, this works for me. It gives me the sugar rush. It gives me, but it gets you beyond the point of and the same thing here. You have to believe that there is something that is going to help you when you have something that is so dark trying to hurt you or has followed you home and is tormenting you. You've got to believe there's some kind of hope somewhere that something is going to put their hand on your shoulder. It's like, hey, buddy, I'm right here. I'll help you through it. Yes. And so, I mean, yes, I do. I do believe that, you do. I mean, it doesn't have to be a religion. It just has to be something stronger.
And I've always believed in that theory that if you have the intention, because intention is everything, everyone has some sort of thought in their mind, not necessarily of a higher power, but that something is much more powerful than them. If it's not in a spiritual respect, it damn well is in a physical respect. Whether you go into nature and observe the forces there, or, you find some other course in this way, you can always find something that can overcome you if you were to try to challenge that, thinking that you were the Almighty in the form that you are now. But of course, we have these different tools, and I mentioned the thoughts manifesting and so forth. These are just the very preliminary tools we're starting to remember now, so that we can take control of this third dimensional vibration in which we exist. Now, when you've seen, of course, you're now somebody who is sort of a middleman, I would say, if my description is correct, between somebody going through a story and whether this is a story that needs to be brought out to the Archbishop and then followed further. So you have a lot of, probably the tight information in way of the details of what goes on. Is there a whole set of ritual, maybe that's not the right word, preparation, that goes into after accepting somebody needs this help setting up the appointment. They arrive. Are there tools that are used through these exorcisms? Does the priest bring out something ancient within the church's lineage that he has faith in will help with the ceremony? How does this go down?
Okay, well, again, in my situation, like I said, I will go out and I will get the evidence that the church needs, and I will bring it back, and I will talk to the people that, the ministers or the priests that I have to deal with. And as soon as they have made a decision that they feel that this is, let's say, a demonic or something that they need to, that's where I kind of cut ties. I have nothing else after that. Is there a whole list of things that the church does? Yes, they need everything from you. They need doctors, reports and any kind of psychiatric reports. They will send you to their own physicians and all mental health care specialists in the whole bit. They have to rule out the whole bit that it's nothing, let's say, mental or physical or anything along that line. It has to be something above and beyond. I mean, people just don't really, somehow if they were going to, let's say, learn a different language, somewhere you have to be exposed to it somewhat. I know some people can just kind of pick it up because they know the way languages are taught, spoken and taught. So, they don't need to sit down and go through books and books and books and read everything that, like a medical sort of talking. Okay, you can tell what the disease is by the name of it. Okay, because they're taking the different bits and pieces of what it is to, that makes up that illness. Okay, it's not just, oh, Joe turned around and invented it and he gets to name it. It's usually when it's the chemical name or the real underneath name. It usually has something to do with what the disease or the cure will be for that certain disease. Okay, same thing here. If I'm going to turn around and I get a 7-year-old kid who knows 10 different languages and he's never been exposed to a book in his life on these things, you've got to figure out where did this come from. Something would have had to have planted this there. Okay, and that's kind of one of the things you're looking for is they have to have some kind of really inhuman strength. Everybody hears about the girl that her kid's under the car and she goes and she moves the car to get the kid up. Well, that's just a physical being thing. That's the it's the I can't think of the name of it.
Adrenaline?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That push to get it done. Okay. But if there was just absolutely no reason, if she could just go over and pick the car up without any reason of any person or anything being under it, that's a whole different story.
Sure.
Excuse me. So, yeah. But yes, there is a whole list of things that I need to provide to the church on either a film document or recording document, and then and when I bring this to the church, then it's a whole list of different things that they need, or they have to prove before they turn around and say that they think this is something just beyond, like I say, some kind of illness or some kind of mental illness. Or, somebody asked me one time, well, it's like these demonic people that come and they can talk all these different languages and backwards and forwards and this and that. It's like, it could be this. Now I may make this sound wrong, because PTSD, is that what people come back from the war with? Is
PTSD?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to just. Okay, so I had a student one time ask me, it's like, well, it could just be that, and I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, I'm not knocking that out, that it's not that, And I provide the church with what I can provide it with, and then the church takes it from that point on to all the specialists that it needs to make sure that it's not that kind of illness or that kind of problem. Okay, like I said, they got to knock out everything they can. They just don't walk into in Exorcist. If I started, like, if I brought something to the church now today and say, "Hey, this is what I found on Joe, and he's got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, and I can prove to the church this," then they sit down with them and they start to go. You're still talking. It's probably going to be a good 2 years before they ever decide that this is going to be, a demonic case. They're going to want
2 years.
Oh yeah. Well,
what happens to the person that's going through this at the time? I mean, I understand that they have to clarify the process and go through, certain standards, but for somebody who's actually experiencing something paranormal that they can't control, how would this work within that 2-year gap?
Yeah, but you've got to make sure that this is the problem. Okay, like I said, because everything that, let's say, the demonic does, the demonic turns around and, he's making it kind of fit into, a mental illness or a physical illness. He's trying to throw you off too.
To shape it into something. Yes, okay, I understand that, sure.
Well, a demon will talk to you with the idea that he will tell you the truth sometimes, and he will lie to you, and it's up to you to determine what is what. And don't believe him, and don't believe everything that he says is a lie. Trust me, if say it's I brought you to, the two of the archdiocese and says, "Hey, I got the evidence that I believe that you're possessed," and you've got to turn around and sit down, and you have to go through all this stuff. Now, in the meantime, anything I have done in my life that has been, quote, bad, the demonic knows all about it. And he's going to let everybody else in that room know all about it.
I've heard this.
And even with the priest, a priest was a kid at one time, and he did his stupid things too. God forgive it. But I mean, it's just all the information you are trying to hide, you might as well just bring out and say, "I did it," because he's going to bring it out, whether you believe it or not. He's going to bring stuff out and say,
using it as a weapon.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Okay, and of course, then it makes me look bad. What right do I have to bring you to the archdiocese and say, "Hey, this is the problem. This is a problem I found with him," when I'm not exonerated from. I mean, I believe God forgives me for everything I've done, and it doesn't matter what. I believe that's what God is. Okay, you pay your penance, you go on. Okay, the same thing like if you're working. You get in a scuff with your boss. Okay, a good boss is the idea. You guys have your words out, and 10 minutes later, it's all over and done with, and we move on. Hey, I make a mistake. Sorry, won't happen again. I'll try never to do that again, blah, blah, blah. Let's move on. It's not that you sit there and you hap on me for the same stupid thing for 6 months because I washed the floor wrong. That's what I'm trying to say. It's okay. But the demon is going to bring up things that you don't probably even remember you did. In a drunken stupor, and like I said, we've all been in a place that we don't want to say we were there or that we didn't do such a thing. But we've all done something stupid in our lives that we're not proud of. And like I said, for some reason, a demon knows this because, as you said before, he's lived the eternity. Okay, he knows what happened before. He knows what's happening tomorrow, and he knows what's going to happen in 100 years. Yeah. So I mean, you're not going to fool him with, "Oh no, I didn't do that." Yeah, okay. Say it all you want. There are certain things that are brought up, whether you're found guilty or not guilty. It still sits in people's minds, saying, "Well, why did they say that about you?" Okay, I know he was found innocent or she was found innocent, but somebody said this about you for a reason. Why? And like I said, the person that said it could be a complete liar and just made the thing up. But
Right, still influence.
that doesn't get you out of the middle of it. And I think and the demonics do that. It's like I say, you can be on the bedside. Um, I know it. I know from listening to you know people talk about an exorcism. You don't walk in and carry on a conversation with this thing. The priest comes in and he starts reading prayers, and that is pretty much of a communication that the priest will have with this demonic. Okay, is he's just going to read the prayer? There's a rituals you do. There's deliverance. Exorcisms, which is something that say I can do because it is just a set of prayers. And then I can't think of the astro. I don't know. It's the big fancy exorcism that they give out. I'm sorry, I'm not an educated man. I graduated the 4th grade though. Okay. No. Like I say, names to me are the worst things. I mean, I can meet you today and tomorrow I would have forgotten your name and But so I mean, names to me and nothing. But I mean, the thing is that where was I going? You're not walking in and carry on a conversation with him. You don't. You're trying to get the demon's name. Okay, but that's about as far as the thing goes. Okay, you're not going to sit there and ask him what he ate last night for dinner. It's
well, how significant is the name in getting that entertaining?
Because supposedly that drops half of their power right off the bat is for them, because now, like yourself, you're having somebody look up my company's name. All right, well now you can turn around and they now have in archives in the Vatican with supposedly the names of all the demons. Okay, but again, that's like I say, it's like the medicine for a doctor. They're coming up with different names all the time because of what they do or how they perform something, and so I mean it's kind of that. So as soon as you can get him to admit the name to you, it kind of drops his power a lot, because now you can turn around and find out what his special talents are. Again, demons have a special talent too. They're not just all down. Well, of course, they're all downright jerks, but it's not just. You need to know what they're do. What their gifts are. Same thing with a spirit. You go in, like you say, you find the jerk. Well, you want to know who the jerk was, because now you can go look up the high school and say, oh yeah, Peter here was, he was the bully of the school, and he did this and this and this, and and you're like, okay, now you have something to work with. Okay, well, Peter, I know your name, and I know you were a troublemaker back in the old days. Okay, let's work on that to get that out of you, and let's see if I can get you just to slowly move on. And that's so yes, the name is important, because again, it kind of explains what they do.
I would assume too that once you have the name, I mean, you talk about these entities almost as if they have a similar architecture and way of weaknesses and strengths. We just, need to identify it. Going into one of these ordeals or endeavors, I should say, is, at least in the way that it's depicted, sort of like going into the ring. You have to assess your opponent, and the more you know about him or her, then, it's easier to kind of cut or subvert those weaknesses in order to take advantage. Now, I mean, we're on a metaphysical field, so obviously some of this becomes more subjective as we talk about it. But then again, there's still the action, there's still the ritual that's performed, and the result that hopefully is acquired afterwards in the most positive of ways. Within the cases that you receive and gather information about and are accepted as something that needs further action, do you know of the trajectory of those people after the fact, after they've gone through this, that they were freed of these spirits, or whether something came back and reoccurred and had to happen again? Are there people who have repeat exorcisms through this particular modality that you offer?
Yes, it does. It can happen both ways. They can execute the demon out, and supposedly it won't come back, but that doesn't stop anything from coming back. Like I said, there was a reason. There was a reason it entered the body to begin with. It doesn't show up at your doorway and say, "Hey, I'm going to possess you." You have to somehow invite this into you or to you, and you have to be at kind of such a low grade in your life that you're asking anything for help. Is the way I find it. You're asking, and it's like, you've prayed to God all you can, and he doesn't give you the Mercedes-Benz you want. But, and like I say, it's like, okay, now I'm so depressed because I really want the Mercedes-Benz. Now I'll start asking anything for help. Is there anything out there that,
Get
okay,
desperate.
And that's it. It's your. That's why you find a lot of the people, and of course that's why it could be hidden for so long, are addicts and alcoholics and this kind of stuff, because all the demonic is doing is just using this vessel, and of course it's showing up to everybody else. It's like, oh, he's a drunk. Oh, he's an addict.
Right.
All this stuff doesn't have anything to do with demonics. How do you know? And like I said, this is why you have to get down and dirty, and you've got to really work into this. And it's not a 2-minute thing. I walk in and decide, oh, look, he doesn't
Right.
keep a good house, or he's got an upside down cross over his bed. That doesn't make everybody such a absolutely bad demonic person. It just, everybody does their own thing, okay? And you've got to overlook their lifestyle to see what the person is really going through. I mean, like I said, I was an alcoholic for years and years and years, and if it wasn't for my girlfriend, I'd probably still be an alcoholic. But I got to give it to the girlfriend for that reason, but I also have to give it to God because he thought I was worth something enough to save. So...
And you got to give it to yourself, too, the one who is the deciding factor in what decision you make. You can have all the influence and support in the world, and we've seen this before, especially in that category, and there are people who have continued to go down the path because they just didn't have the strength to do what they really thought their highest vision of themselves were. So you know what, my friend, that's amazing that you are where you are today, and you can sit here and relay this experience to us, and of course, relate it to the topic that we're speaking about, because it does have relevance. I certainly commend you for that. Now, listen, Stephen, I am enjoying this conversation to absolutely no end, but we are getting close to the end of the show. But before we go, I do have one more question I want to ask you before I get into the promotion here. I have dropped your link into the chat, guys. You'll see that there. Go and check out Stephen at Seven Hills Ghost Hunters and Paranormal Researchers.com and follow his work. Please, he's done some fantastic stuff. Of course, you can check it all out. Now, with that being said, Rutland Prison Camp is a long story short, Stephen, I cannot go back there because the entity that attached itself to me was with me for 3 months, and when I finally was able to get it off of me, anytime I've looked that way, either through remote viewing or just interest, because I wanted to film a documentary and just go about the journalistic way, something keeps echoing and resonating from that property that says, do not return here because you might very well get it again. Now, the significant thing here is that that particular entity Michael had warned me about before we went out and did our investigation. He said, you know what, this is out there, just want to let you know, but if you want to keep it off of you, stay away from the tunnels. Well, we did just that, but sure enough, this thing did run into the root cellar, and I was already having experiences during that point. We left, and long story short, again, this thing had really given me problems. Now, before, when I had talked to Michael and he had brought this to my attention, he also said I had to exercise this off another paranormal investigator 8 months prior to today. And I thought, well, that's interesting, and it was always in the back of my head. Now, I did find Joni Mayhem, and I did have an interview with her here on Dark Hour. She actually wrote an entire book based on her experience at Rutland Prison Camp, which I'm sure you're aware of. What is your thought on that particular entity? Have you had any experience with that around the time that this was sort of becoming an issue in people's lives and paranormal investigators out in the field?
No, I never, not in that case. I've never had anything at the Rutland prison camps that I felt has ever followed me, even rudely interrupted me at a ghost hunt out there. I mean, I've been very lucky because, again, like you said, it's, I think you're probably the third person I know of that has said they have brought something home from Rutland.
I'm not surprised.
And no, but that's anywhere. You go out into a cemetery and you just now see. It's funny. I learned a long time ago. It's like you don't die in the cemetery. There's no ghosts in cemeteries. Yes, there are. Okay.
Yes.
A lot of people go in there and perform rituals that are trying to conjure, demons in the whole bit. These people don't realize, oh, I'll go out here with a bunch of my friends. We'll perform this ritual. And 10 minutes after it happens, they don't see anything and they all go home. Well, they don't realize they've still opened up the door. And I don't know what the timeline is for, the passed away or the dead. I mean, it could be my minutes is still a minute for them, or my minute can be 800 years for them, or vice versa. So, but eventually, if you have opened the door, you can pretty much guarantee that something will come through. And I'm just giving you fair warning too, that, like you say, when you turn around and you look at pictures or you look at things about the prison camps, I'm not telling you that these things can't come visit you through that way too. I really believe that there's a mindset, or there's a, because like I said, your mind, even though you only think it's right here, your mind goes everywhere. Like I said, I work for a university and I think about the school all the time because I'm a custodian for the dorms. So I'm wondering what these kids are doing to my dorms, when I'm sitting at home. But also there are times in my own mind that I picture it exactly what I'm walking into the next day. That this is, trashed and that kind of stuff. So just be wary about anything that you deal with that. And if you want to send me your home thing on the private chat, I've got a cross that I will send you that has been blessed by the Pope.
Well, thank you.
I mean, and whether it's something you believe in or not, it's always something that to me is there. So it's, I'm not saying it's a guarantee for nothing, but to me, it's something that I offer it. Like when all the people at work, are born, I always seem to get a handful of these crosses, and I just hand them out with the understanding here. I don't care if you believe or not. It's if you want to put it up, fine. If not, stick it in a drawer at the bottom of your dresser. Put it in your house and just keep it there. And if anything happens in your mind that you think something's happening, think about it. Because I believe that holds a lot of power. And like I said, it doesn't have to always be a religion thing. It just has to be the idea. Your faith for yourself is pretty much a lot of this. Okay, so like I said, if you can get in contact with me later, and I can turn around and I can have this shipped out to you, because like I said, it's just something that I You know, I've always done, and I've got a true belief in that kind of, and then energy. So
I really, really appreciate that because, again, I believe that the power object, it's not about the object itself. It's about the intention that's imbued within this, and the person who puts it there, that's what's there. You don't necessarily have to have the belief system or, understand the modality to garner the effects or have the protection of something like that. And for you to extend yourself in that respect, man, I absolutely appreciate it and will certainly accept that from you because guess what? You can't have too much protection. And there's times where you're going to need that, or at least it may help you feel a little bit more solid in way of what you're doing. And again, it's better to have that with you than not to. I want to just comment very quickly on your thoughts about the mind, really being connected in so many different ways and how thoughts can draw these things to you. The Pukwudgies of legend down there in the Bridgewater Triangle, I had the experience in way of research wherein next thing you know, just thinking about these little guys, they were there in my house, around my home. And that's when I said, okay, you know what? There's certain things I'm not going to get into. And of course, when I look at Rutland Prison Camp in that sense, I'm far enough away that it's not reaching me. I'm not getting too close to it. Although there was one moment about a year ago, I was literally taking a step out of the house to go and film around the area, and I just had the most awful feeling, and I felt that if I just didn't go, I wouldn't have to deal with that feeling. And as sure as shit, as soon as I turned around and said, well, I'm going to go do something else, the feeling was gone. So I've heeded the warning and certainly appreciate your introspection when it comes to that because, somebody who has 30 plus years in the field, well, they know something.
in my education, don't forget my education. 4 years, okay?
So, Stephen, I've put, I've posted this link and I'll do it again here for you guys to go and check out Stephen at Seven Hills Ghost Hunters and Paranormal Researchers.com. And of course, Stephen, do you have anything else that we can check out in way of your work? Anywhere else that you'd like people to reference what you do, or any way that they can get in contact with you if it's not through the website?
Well, everything should be the website. And like I said, a lot of the stuff I don't post or I don't really talk a whole lot about is because it's all private housing types. If they want to be on a TV show, great. I know enough people that I can set them up and say, hey, here you go. You can be on TV and, you can bring this out. A lot of the ones that I deal with themselves do not want anything to do with the TV show. They just want it gone. And like I said, and that's why I keep their privacy completely private. And, you might hear me tell a story, but you don't hear me tell the story of the idea of who it is or where it's from or the whole bit. This is a story I got for you. Okay, just real quick, just one story I do have to say about the idea. Okay, sure. I did meet a little girl that turned around. It was a hotel, and supposedly the demon there was holding this little girl because while they were alive, or not the demon itself, but while the girl was alive, supposedly this demon hurt her over and over and over again. So when she finally passed away, her spirit was stuck there and the demon was holding her there. Well, it was funny. It was one night I had gone through the investigation, okay, and it was a long drive, so I figured, I'll kind of sleep it off for a couple of hours. I got into bed and I just laid down, and I sleep on my side. I'm a big guy, so I sleep on my side. And honest to God, I felt this little girl get into the bed, snuggle up to my back, and slept the whole night there with me. Oh, my
God.
When I got up the next morning, I could feel her sit up, get off the bed, and more or less, she just kind of knew that she had walked away. But that you could feel that. That was the first time she slept, felt safe in many, many years. And really, that made me feel good, that.
Oh, that absolutely.
Even though that she was passed away, I could make even her feel good. So
You better believe it, Stephen, and we make that sort of impact, and half the time we're not even aware of it. the fact that you're into this field and you had the experience and knowledge and are able to identify certain things, even considering yourself not to be extremely sensitive, your energy expands in such a way that again impacts certain levels of vibration that again we're not aware of in our waking states. Perhaps in dream this can occur where we have some knowledge of this and know that we're doing it, but it's few and far between. And of course, in the same respect, it's not as consistent as we'd like it to be. But my friend, you have made an impact on many people, and in fact, of course, you've made an impact on me. I've remembered you after all of these years, and finally had the opportunity to reach out to you. And I really, really want to thank you for being on the show with us tonight. And if you can, stick around for just a moment. I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera. If you can't and have to go, I totally understand. I can certainly get in touch with you.
No,
all right.
Not a problem.
Thank you, my friend. All right, brother. I'm going to let you off at the moment, but once again, thank you so much for being with us on the show here.
Anytime. Like I said, anybody who needs help, give me a call. It's like, do what I can. That's all I can offer.
That's all any of us can offer, Stephen. Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for being with us this evening. This turned out to be a very interesting interview tonight, and I didn't think anything less, but the depth and articulation that Stephen does have is certainly shining through, and I think that with what we're seeing as we move forward in this field, these experiences that get talked about, and we continue to reiterate some of the core theories. We're finding the consistencies, and we're bringing up together that braid. Now, it's not just the loose strands of anecdotal experience. We're now creating something that has more solidity to it. And you know what? I have to say I am honored to be at the very forefront for this ride and to be able to deliver what I can in way of this assistance to all of you out there supporting the channel in way of your views and your presence. And of course, thanks for the donations and super chats when they come in, folks. Of course, it helps the channel and what we're doing here very much. I do appreciate all of that. And folks, I will tell you that we will be back next week. I do have a very interesting interview coming up on Monday with some folks, you call them laymen, who have had experiences with the paranormal and cannot explain this. In fact, we do have a very interesting photograph to reveal that was taken by a friend of mine. I'm sorry, it was not him who took the photograph, provided it. I believe it was his father or grandfather. Long story short, there is a very distinct image of a woman apparition within the family photo, and not one of those family members can identify who this woman is. And where the woman is positioned, there's a terrace underneath her, nowhere for anybody to actually stand. So this is going to be interesting, and Monday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be getting into that. Oh my goodness. Aaron Morrison, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. I do hope that's working well on your end. I see one. Thank you so much for your support there, Aaron. Continued supporter of Dark Hour Paranormal. Do you think I would say goof on? Not tonight. But unfortunately, Rich went on before me, so I don't get the pleasure of watching his show afterwards. All right, folks, there's a couple things I want to say as we're leaving here. Number one, I want to thank Cashew Gesundheit for her very diligent work in finding Stephen's working link to his website. I just was having trouble, and it was probably because of my fat fingers. Just misspelling something here. Cashew was right in the mission and came through in spades. So thank you so much for that. It'll also be in the description below, folks. I also want to say very quickly, happy birthday to Denba. I don't know if he's still here, but hopefully, if he isn't, somebody let him know. Dark Hour Paranormal wishes him a hell of a happy birthday. I don't know how old you are, but keep them coming, my friend. There's much more to live. And I think that's about it for us tonight, guys. Thank you for sticking in with us this week. We'll be back next week with even more of this compelling and intriguing subject matter and continue to go in depth. Folks, until then, stay vigilant, stay interested, and stay explorative within this beautifully nebulous field that we all traverse in seeking the truth. We'll see you next time, guys. Ciao.